Caleb Montrose was 36 years old when the invitation arrived in a pale gold envelope with his name written in calligraphy on the front, which he recognized immediately as his ex-wife's handwriting, because Simone had always written her capital C's with a particular downward curl that she had learned from her mother and never unlearned. He opened it at his kitchen counter in the house in Nashville that Simone did not know he owned, with the particular stillness of a man who has learned to read documents before he decides how to feel about them. The invitation was to the engagement party of Simone Adeline Price. She had already resumed her maiden name, which he noted without comment, and one, Marcus Holt, to be held at the Vanderbilt rooftop in 3 weeks. Cocktail attire. 7 o'clock. At the bottom, in Simone's handwriting again, separate from the printed text, were 6 words she had written and apparently decided to leave. So you can see what winning looks like. He set the invitation on the counter. He looked at it for a moment. He poured himself a glass of water. What Simone did not know, what Marcus Holt did not know, what the 47 guests on that invitation list did not know, was that the Vanderbilt rooftop venue had been purchased 8 months ago by a hospitality group whose primary investor and silent majority stakeholder had a name that appeared nowhere on the signage, nowhere on the website, and nowhere in any conversation Simone had ever thought to have with him about what he did for a living. What happened at that engagement party would shut down the venue, end the evening before the second round of drinks, and answer Simone's 6 handwritten words in a language she had spent 4 years failing to learn. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from, and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The Nashville house sat on 2 acres in a neighborhood east of the city that had been transitioning for the better part of a decade, a kind of neighborhood where a craftsman with a deep porch and mature oaks in the yard could still exist without announcement. Caleb had purchased it 2 years ago under an LLC his attorney had structured, and he had spent 4 months renovating it himself on weekends. Not because he needed to, but because he had grown up in a household where you knew how to do things with your hands, or you learned. And because the work itself was the kind of thinking he could not do at a desk. The porch ran the full width of the front of the house, and on mornings when he did not have calls before 9, he sat there with coffee and watched the street come awake, the dog walkers, the school run, the particular unhurried quality of a neighborhood that had not yet decided it was finished becoming what it was going to be. He found something in that quality that he recognized. He had spent most of his adult life in the process of becoming what he was going to be, and he had learned to be comfortable in that condition, to move inside it without impatience. His grandfather Ezra had built houses for 40 years in Memphis, and he had told Caleb when Caleb was 12 and trailing him through a half-framed structure on a Saturday morning, "You want to know what a building is? It's just a decision made permanent. Every nail is a decision. You put enough decisions in the right place, in the right order, and what you get is something that can hold weight." He had been dead for 9 years. Caleb quoted him privately, and often. Caleb ran a private equity firm, a small one by the standards of the industry, 14 people, and a fund size that would have surprised the people in his life who categorized him by the truck he drove and the neighborhood he lived in. His specialty was hospitality and real estate, mid-market assets that were undervalued not because they were broken, but because no one had asked the right questions about them. He had a facility for the right questions that he had possessed since he was young and had learned over time to deploy selectively, because there was a difference between knowing the answer and revealing that you knew it, and the difference was frequently worth a great deal of money. He had met Simone at a fundraiser in Nashville 6 years ago. She was in event planning at the time, working for a firm that handled corporate galas and private parties, and she had the particular social fluency of a person who had grown up in rooms like that one and knew how to move through them without effort. She was bright and beautiful, and she laughed at the right moments, and she had an eye for the way a room was constructed, the sight lines, the lighting, the way people move through space, that he had found genuinely interesting. What he had not understood, not fully, not until it was assembled in retrospect, was that her eye for construction was primarily social. She was reading rooms for hierarchy, not architecture. She wanted to know who was significant, and she organized her attention accordingly. And Caleb, who moved through rooms quietly and without announcement, had registered on her scale in a particular way, promising enough to pursue, uncertain enough to hedge against. They had been married for 3 years. The last 18 months of it had been the kind of marriage that continued, not because it was working, but because neither of them had yet completed the calculation that ended it. She had completed hers first. She had told him on a Tuesday evening in March that she didn't think he was going anywhere, and she needed someone who was going somewhere, and she thought they both deserved honesty. He had thanked her for the honesty. He had driven to the Nashville house, which she had never been to, and he had sat on the porch in the dark and listened to the street and finished the calculation she had started. The divorce had finalized 11 months ago. He had not been angry. He had been, for a short time, something quieter and more structural than anger, a recognition that he had built something on a foundation that was not what he had assessed it to be, and that the correct response was not demolition, but redesign. He had been redesigning. The invitation sat on his kitchen counter for 2 days before he picked it up again. He read the 6 handwritten words at the bottom a second time. He thought about Simone writing them, the downward curl of the capital S, the decision to leave them rather than reconsider them. He picked up his phone. He called his operations director, a man named Darius, who had worked with him for 6 years and had the particular competence of someone who anticipated requirements before they were stated. He said, "I need you to pull the file on the Vanderbilt rooftop property, and I need you to confirm who has a venue booking there 3 weeks from Saturday." He heard Darius typing. He heard the pause that meant Darius had found what Caleb already knew was there. "Caleb," Darius said. "I know," Caleb said. "Pull the booking contract and the event coordinator notes and send them to me tonight." He set the phone down. He set the invitation beside it. He looked at both of them for a moment. Every nail was a decision. He was about to make several. He moved with the same deliberate calm that defined all his actions. He called his attorney first, a woman named Patricia Ellison, who had structured every significant transaction in his portfolio for the past 7 years, and who had the manner of someone who had stopped finding things complicated sometime in her early 40s. She answered on the second ring. "Tell me about the Vanderbilt rooftop," he said. "You own 62% through the hospitality fund," she said, without searching for the file. She already knew. "The venue management agreement runs through the property management company, which is wholly owned by the fund. You have operational authority, meaning you can direct the management company on venue-level decisions. That authority has never been exercised directly by you personally. You've let the management team run it. What are the grounds for a venue cancellation on a booked event?" Patricia was quiet for 2 seconds. "Force majeure, material breach of the venue agreement, or a determination by the property owner or operator that the event poses operational or reputational risk." She paused. "Are we talking about the engagement party booking?" He had not told her about the invitation. He did not ask how she knew. Patricia Ellison had her own methods of knowing things, which was part of what he paid her for. "I want to understand my options," he said. "Your options are broad," she said. "What you do with them is a character question, not a legal one." She paused again. "Caleb, what are you planning to do?" He was quiet for a moment. Outside the window, the oak trees moved in a small wind that had come up from the south. He thought about 6 words in Simone's handwriting. He thought about his grandfather's voice in a half-framed house on a Saturday morning. "I'm going to attend the party," he said, "and I'm going to let the evening develop naturally." Patricia said, "I'm going to need more than that. Send me the venue management contact," he said, "and the booking file. I'll call you Thursday." He spent the following 2 days building what he thought of as a site plan, the same mental architecture he constructed before any significant business engagement, a map of the people, the information, the sequence of events, and the points at which he could apply specific decisions for specific outcomes. He was not planning a confrontation. Confrontations were for people who needed to be seen reacting. He was planning a revelation, which was different. A revelation required patience and precision and the willingness to let other people's assumptions do most of the structural work for you. He called Darius again on Wednesday. "Marcus Holt," he said. "Who is he?" He heard typing. "Commercial real estate development. Mid-size. Based in Brentwood. He has a project in the Gulch that's been stalled for 14 months, permitting issues layered on top of a financing gap. The lead lender pulled back in January." More typing. "He's been shopping for a bridge lender or an equity partner for about 8 months. Caleb looked at the ceiling. What's the gap? $4.2 million to close the financing and move the project through the next phase. What's the project worth at completion? Fully stabilized? A pause. Conservatively, 60 to 65 million. Caleb said nothing for a moment. "Caleb," Darius said. "I know." Caleb said, "I know." He looked at the invitation on his kitchen counter. "Pull the full project file. I want to see the permitting history, the lender correspondence, and the equity structure. Some things you didn't say. You just built toward them." He drove to Memphis that Thursday to see his uncle Terrence, who was 68 and had retired from 30 years as a civil engineer, with the same quiet satisfaction he brought to everything, and who lived in a house near the river, with a workshop in the backyard, where he built furniture he gave away to people who needed it. Terrence was at the workbench when Caleb arrived, running a hand plane along a cabinet door, with the unhurried focus of a man for whom the work was sufficient justification for itself. He did not stop when Caleb sat down on the stool beside the bench. He finished the pass, examined the edge, and made a second pass before he said anything. "Your grandfather would say you're overthinking it," Terrence said. "Grandfather would say the same thing about any decision that took more than an hour. He wasn't wrong." Terrence set the plane down. "Tell me about this woman." Caleb told him. He told him about the 3 years and the Tuesday evening in March, and the 11 months since, and the pale gold envelope, and 6 words in familiar handwriting. He told it the way he told everything, without editorializing, in the correct sequence, with the relevant facts. Terrence listened the way the Montrose men listened, which was completely, without interruption, with a particular quality of attention that communicated that what you were saying was being held, not just heard. When Caleb finished, Terrence was quiet for a moment. "She didn't know you," Terrence said. "No, and she wants you to come watch her celebrate not knowing you." That's one way to read the invitation. Terrence looked at him with the expression he reserved for conclusions that were obvious. "Go," he said. "Go and be exactly who you are. Not louder than that. Not quieter. Exactly." He picked up the plane. "Let the building speak." Caleb drove back to Nashville. He made 2 phone calls on Friday morning, both to people who had worked with him for years and understood how he moved and why. He sent 2 emails. He reviewed the Gulch project file Darius had sent. All of it. The permitting correspondence, and the lender letters, and the equity structure. And he made notes in the margin of a yellow legal pad in his small handwriting. He called Patricia on Friday afternoon. "I'm not canceling the event," he said. Patricia was quiet for a moment. All right. I'm attending. As a guest. You were invited. I was. He paused. I'd like the venue management team to know I'll be on site. Standard protocol for a principal visiting a property. And I'd like security to be present at appropriate levels for an event of this size. How many people on the guest list? 47, he said. Plus staff and the event coordinator. I'll notify the venue manager, Patricia said. Appropriate security for that guest count is typically 2 to 4 personnel. Tell them 6, Caleb said. It's a special occasion. Patricia did not respond for a moment. Then she said, I'll make the call. He set the phone down. He looked at the invitation. He thought about what winning looked like. He put on a charcoal suit on Saturday evening. Not his most expensive one. His most precise one. The one his tailor in Charlotte had built to a set of measurements that had not changed in 6 years, because Caleb was careful about everything, including the things that seemed incidental. He drove to the Vanderbilt rooftop in a black sedan that his driver Kelvin brought to the house at 6:30, because Caleb had learned a long time ago that the way you arrived at a place sent a message before you opened your mouth, and he had decided to be thoughtful about the message. He was there at 7:15, which was intentional. Not first, not late. Present. The rooftop was beautiful. He knew it was beautiful because he had reviewed the renovation proposal 18 months ago and approved the lighting plan and the terrace design and the bar configuration, though he had never stood in the finished space until now. The Nashville skyline held the last of the evening light at the western edge. The tables were dressed in cream linen. There was a string quartet near the far terrace, which was a detail the event coordinator had selected, and which worked well with the acoustic profile of the space. He checked in at the entrance with the venue coordinator, a young woman named Ashley who knew exactly who he was, and whose expression when she saw him contained a professional composure that cost her something to maintain. "Mr. Montrose," she said quietly. "Welcome," he thanked her. He moved into the room. He saw Simone immediately, across the terrace, in a champagne-colored dress that she wore well, talking to a cluster of women he half recognized from the years of their marriage. She had not seen him yet. He moved to the bar, ordered sparkling water, and turned to take in the room with the same patient survey he brought to any property he was assessing. Marcus Holt was near the terrace railing, talking to 2 men in suits, with the loose confidence of an evening that was going exactly as he had expected. He was shorter than Caleb had pictured, which was an irrelevant detail he noted and released. He had the surface quality of a man who was comfortable being the largest thing in a room, which was a quality that functioned well in rooms where it was accurate. Caleb recognized the moment Simone saw him. It moved across her face the way surprise moves, the first fraction of a second before management arrives. She excused herself from her group and crossed the terrace, and when she reached him, her expression had organized itself into something that was attempting amusement. "You came," she said. "You invited me," he said. She looked at the glass in his hand, the suit, the ease with which he stood in the room. Something in her recalibration told him she was reassessing the 6 words she had written, deciding whether they had been wise. He did not help her with that assessment. "I didn't think you'd actually show up," she said. "I wanted to see the venue," he said. Which was true. Marcus Holt arrived at Simone's shoulder with the proprietary ease of a man claiming geography. He extended a hand to Caleb with the particular handshake of a man establishing scale. Marcus Holt. Caleb Montrose. Marcus's expression did not change. The name meant nothing to him yet. "You're an old friend," Simone said, with the framing of a woman controlling a narrative. Caleb smiled. He did not correct her. He excused himself, moved to the terrace railing, and looked out at the skyline and waited for the evening to develop naturally. It developed at 8:40. Ashley, the venue coordinator, appeared at his elbow at 8:35, her voice low and her posture carrying the news before she delivered it. Mr. Montrose, the venue manager asked me to let you know. The building fire suppression system ran a diagnostic test this afternoon and flagged a pressure irregularity in the terrace zone. We had a safety engineer on site an hour ago. He's recommending we close the terrace as a precautionary measure until we can run a full system check. She paused. The terrace is approximately 70% of the event's usable space. What's the recommendation? Caleb said. The venue manager is recommending we inform the event organizer that we need to conclude the event by 9:15 to allow for the inspection. Caleb looked at the terrace, the string quartet still playing, the cream linens, the skyline holding its last light. He thought about 6 words in familiar handwriting. He thought about what winning looked like and what it actually looked like, and the difference between those two things. Tell the venue manager to do whatever the safety engineer recommends, he said. Exactly that. Nothing more. Ashley nodded. She moved away. He found Darius near the bar at 8:50, which was where he had asked Darius to be. The 6 security personnel were visible at the perimeter of the space, professional and unhurried, which was the appropriate level of visible for this situation. Darius leaned toward him. Holt just found out, Darius said. Caleb looked across the room. Marcus Holt was talking to the event coordinator with the body language of a man encountering a system that was not responding to his inputs. Simone was beside him. Her expression had moved past management into something raw. Marcus Holt crossed the room. He covered the distance with the specific energy of a man who had decided to resolve something by arriving. He stopped in front of Caleb. You're the owner, he said. It was not a question. Of the property, Caleb said. Yes. Holt looked at him for a moment. This is our engagement party. I know that, Caleb said. I was invited. You're shutting it down. The venue manager is following a safety protocol, Caleb said. The fire suppression system flagged a pressure issue this afternoon. I can show you the engineer's report if you'd like. It's thorough. He paused. The safety of everyone in the building takes precedence. I'm sure you understand that. Holt held his gaze. Something was working behind his eyes. The same recalibration Caleb had watched in other rooms. The moment when a man realizes the room is organized differently than he understood it to be. The Gulch Project, Holt said. The name arrived slowly, like a man feeling for ground. I'm aware of it, Caleb said. Holt was quiet for a moment. You should call Darius on Monday, Caleb said. He handed Holt a card, not his own card, Darius's card. The project has real value. The financing gap is addressable. It's worth a conversation. Holt looked at the card. This is not connected to tonight, Caleb said. Tonight is a safety issue and a coincidence. Monday is business. He looked at the card in Holt's hand. But the offer is genuine. I looked at the project file. Your instinct on the location was right. He looked past Holt to where Simone was standing, 20 feet away, watching the exchange with an expression he had not seen on her face in the years of their marriage. The open, unmanaged expression of a person who has arrived somewhere they did not know they were going. He walked toward her. He stopped at a conversational distance. The string quartet had concluded. The room was moving toward its conclusion. I didn't come here for this, he said to her. I came because you invited me, and I wanted to see the venue. He paused. It's a beautiful space. I'm proud of how it came out. She looked at him. The champagne-colored dress. The expression that was no longer performing anything. Caleb, I hope the evening was good before this, he said. And he meant it, which was the thing about Caleb Montrose that Simone had never fully located. That his kindness was not strategic. It was structural. It was load-bearing. It was the thing you didn't see until you were standing in it. He nodded to her. He collected his jacket from the coat check. He walked to the elevator with Darius beside him, and the 6 security personnel completing their standard post-event sweep. He did not look back. He was done performing smallness in rooms he owned. 11 months later, Caleb was on the porch of the Nashville house on a Saturday morning in early November, with coffee and the specific quality of silence that a city produces when it is briefly between its own noise. The oak trees had turned and were losing their leaves in a way that was unhurried and complete, the way he liked things to happen. The Gulch project had closed in February. Marcus Holt had called Darius that Monday, as Caleb had suggested, and the conversation had been professional and productive, which was the only thing Caleb had intended it to be. The financing gap had been bridged through the Hospitality Fund's real estate vehicle, a structure Patricia had executed with her usual precision. The project was now 14 months from projected completion and tracking well. Holt was a competent developer who had a structural problem, not a character problem, and Caleb had learned to know the difference. He had heard, through the ambient information of a city the size of Nashville, that the engagement had ended sometime in the spring. He did not know the details and had not sought them. He registered the information with the same response he applied to most information that was not directly actionable, which was to note it, file it, and return to the work in front of him. There was a woman named Josephine reading inside, in the chair near the window that caught the morning light. She was an architect he had met at a project review in the spring. She had been consulting on a hospitality renovation he was funding, and she had sat across a table from him and disagreed with 2 of his assumptions about the load distribution in the renovation structural plan. And she had been right both times, and he had found himself thinking about that quality of being right without needing to announce it for the better part of a week before he called her. She asked good questions. She understood buildings the way he understood buildings, as collections of decisions made permanent. She had come to the Nashville house for the first time in August and walked through it slowly and run her hand along the doorframe of the porch entrance and said he had done the renovation correctly, which was not a small thing to say, and both of them knew it. She had met his Uncle Terrence in September at a dinner in Memphis, and Terrence had found Caleb afterward and said only, "She sees the building," which was, from Terrence, a complete sentence. Caleb picked up his coffee. The oak trees moved. The street was quiet. He thought about a half-framed house in Memphis on a Saturday morning, and a man with a nail gun, and an opinion about decisions made permanent. And he thought about a pale gold envelope, and 6 words in familiar handwriting. And he thought about the distance between what winning looked like and what it was. He heard Josephine moving inside. The screen door opened. She sat in the other porch chair with her own coffee and her book, and did not make a production of her presence, which was the thing about her that had first made him understand she was different. They sat in the quiet for a while. The leaves came down from the oaks in the particular unhurried way of things that have finished what they were. He had built everything worth keeping. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.